So Jim Marous here at the FIsionaries podcast booth at CoLab 2025, sponsored by Alchemy. Digital transformation can start at any point. You can start from a standstill to a fast process, or you can be in the middle of the process. But one thing we have to remember is change is not going to stop. It's not going to go slower, and you have to continually evolve. Today's guest from NASA Federal Credit Union will share a story about how they went from a legacy core to a digital-ready platform in less than a year, from analysis through to implementation. It's an amazing journey, but one that everybody should take note of as you're making excuses for why you're not moving forward. I am so fortunate today to have Liam Petraska.
Thank you, Jim.
From NASA Federal Credit Union here with us. And, you know, it's interesting, Liam, we always like to start with, what's your background? How did you get where you are today?
Yeah.
Let's share that with you for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me, first of all, Jim.
Thank you.
I've been with NASA Federal Credit Union for about 3 years. I'm the digital banking manager there. So I serve as pretty much the primary stakeholder for digital banking, although most of my job is kind of getting cross-functional folks together, stakeholder group kind of formulated, a steering committee group, and then we all make decisions for digital banking. Previous to that, I worked in another credit union, Michigan State University Federal Credit Union.
Credit union, yeah.
It is, for about 6 years as well. So I've been in credit union space for about 10 total. Yep.
And before that?
In the music business. We just had this conversation. So I worked I was DJ for quite a while in my 20s.
Technology.
Yeah, exactly. EDM counts as tech, for sure. And then worked in the music business for a long, long time before moving into the banking space. So
Liam, a lot of times when we have a guest on, they've been going through the transformation process for a long time. In fact, I think the last few interviews we've done, the person's been in banking at their organization for 10, 15, 20 years. The reality is you have a fairly new foothold at NASA Federal, but it's not a slow-moving credit union. I mean, they have a technology and an innovation core, but it's my understanding that as far as your digital banking platform transformation, it's been rather recent. And it's been very fast. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so I joined again NASA about 3 years ago, and I really joined to help solve digital banking. You know, they were on an older platform, Westcom's Symmetry platform, which many people know for good or bad reasons. But when I joined, NASA was actually fairly far along in terms of digital efficiencies, especially like in back office, things like that. I mean, we're a $5.5 billion credit union, but very lean in terms of employees because you don't need that workforce to support it through RPA and things like that. And so I came with a very specific purpose, which was how do we do digital banking at NASA? And so very quickly, I think we were there for about 3 months before we finally decided, hey, we're going to find a new platform. We're not going to, attempt to keep this one alive internally. Did our own RFP process. 9 months later, we picked Alchemy as the platform. 10 months after that, we're going live on Alchemy, in November 2023. And I mean, we saw huge changes that we'll talk about from the membership experience. And now we've been live for about 1.5 years. We're outside of the post-launch kind of wake that was left behind when you try and button up support and fix bugs, and now we're just rolling.
and what's your asset size again?
5.5 billion.
And how many branches?
13.
So rather lean from a branch standpoint for the amount of assets you have.
Correct. Yep. It's very, we're very national focused. We're very brand focused. We still have the local footprint in the Maryland, DC area because of the government connection. But I mean, with segs like NASA and SpaceX, it's much more of a national footprint. And so that was really one of the big focuses for digital banking is how do we go to a platform that's going to let us scale beyond just our local environment and be a digital experience that people expect from a brand like NASA.
So were you brought in to actually make digital banking happen?
Yeah, do the thing. Yeah.
So obviously, when it took, what you said, 3 months to decide that you're going to develop a new platform.
Correct. Yep.
And then 9 months to implement it.
Yeah, it's go time.
That is speed beyond comparison. I mean, I've been banking for close to 50 years now. And it is amazing what's possible today from a small base of assets to be able to build partnerships and then make something live quicker than we could make a decision about an onboarding program in the past.
Yeah.
So, but to do that, it's not just the technology. I referenced it in the FIsionaries Awards ceremony that we just had, is that you need leadership that buys into innovation, doing something quick, being able to do big and scalability at the same time.
Yeah.
How important was that? Because you came from Michigan State University Credit Union, which has a great leadership core from a standpoint of partnering, building innovation, doing things that no one's done before between the CUSO and the credit union. How did that impact your movement forward as far as speed expectations, not just from your management, but from you as well?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And there's a couple things there for sure. I was immediately blown away by the amount of trust put in me, kind of being new to the credit union, to say, hey, you have a ton of experience in the digital banking space from working at MSU, where we had built our own digital banking platform. And so, I mean, the board, our executive level, all the way down to, middle management, like just the amount of trust in the process was immense to me. Like that I still have a massive amount of respect for that. And I think really when we got the band together, at NASA, we had a really good cross-functional group, from operational sectors, marketing, retail services, and such. We as a group went along through this vendor search process. And so we looked at, I love the digital banking space. I had known Alchemy and folks at Alchemy for a long time. But we looked at close to 12, 15 different platforms. And I think you have to, because it's awesome. There's so much cool stuff out there
keep
now.
Leapfrogging each other, too.
There's new players, old players, established ones that are on the rise, ones that are on the fall. You have to look at all of them. And so, being able to do that as a group and bring everyone along with you so they feel invested in the decision, I think is huge. I think one of the best things that has worked well at NASA is having a specific role to help move the needle. And that's kind of like what I've, even post-launch, kind of view my role to be, is help move things forward, and continue to work with everyone at the credit union, get the buy-in and things like that. But progress has to keep happening, regardless.
You can't stop.
No, you can't.
Because I reference the fact that the train is moving faster than ever before.
With 100%.
It will not slow down again. So you can no longer assume that you can be a fast follower and ever catch up.
Exactly.
Because the consumer's pushing that needle too. You're following the consumer. And your team's following you.
Well, that's at Alchemy they say the North Star is the customers and stuff like that. For a financial institution, it's your member. And it's meeting their expectations. And that's where you have to start as the source of truth and then work backwards from my perspective. I think the other thing that's really helped, you mentioned MSU and that experience. Having been involved in that process to build a digital banking platform gives you a ton of perspective of the time and effort it takes to support that. And I think that's a good cross-section where you're at a unique spot where you can talk both languages. You can talk about expectations within the FI and, challenges with any platform that happen. But then you also kind of empathize and understand from the vendor perspective what it's like for a platform like Alchemy to support, what they should say, 20 million users at once,
Insane,
And so it's a really good cross-section to make sure to continue to foster the relationship, because ultimately the vendor you chose, that's your team. That is who's there for you. And so keeping that positive relationship with the Alchemy team has been amazing too.
So I know you go through a long litany of qualifications to make the decision you made. If you were to say the top three that were so important for you, because the reality is every institution that we talk to has a different set of criteria that were the most important. Some of it's because of what legacy is in place. Some of it's about their North Star, where they want to go. We've learned more and more about the fact that organizations have to also say, when they invest in a new platform, they have to say, as far as where that money goes, how does that correlate with where they're going in other areas? Because you can't unwind some of those things. So if you were to say what the top three criteria were, what are you really looking for when you found a partner?
I would say number one with Alchemy was 100% just the maturity, and not from a old guard standpoint. I had a lot of respect for Alchemy when I was at MSU. I had made connections there prior. And they are one of the few platforms to me that have been able to stay modern while refactoring themselves multiple times. So one of the lessons learned from building a digital banking platform is it's the support that's hard. It's really easy, frankly, to build a brand new digital banking platform in a vacuum and start selling it. You can do that. 5-10 years down the road when you've got hundreds of clients and it's not new anymore and it's not fast anymore, like that's really when the challenges start to hit. And so Alchemy as an organization and as a platform had done that several times and come out stronger at the other side. And so that to me was one of the main things that we looked at was that. The second.
So basically, to make sure that the organization not only has a legacy that's strong,
Yep.
but has a resilience that can move forward, and you get the feeling they're not resting on their laurels. They're continually evolving as an organization. Okay.
Yeah, you definitely get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a new fly-by-night player or anything like that. It's established, it can prove itself, but it's not stuck in time.
Right.
You know, and those players exist
Yeah.
too. The second thing I'm going to say is what can it enable? So our perspective with digital banking, and I think probably the best view, is that it facilitates other things. It is what gets you to the next thing. It's not the destination.
Yep.
And so we knew right away that we wanted to consider kind of newer things like P2P and crypto down the road, real-time payments. And so you needed to find a platform that would get you that in the future. It didn't have to get it for you at go live, but like just knew it had those vendor partnerships, those relationships. And
It's kind of nice because they're evaluating their partners on your behalf.
Right.
And that way, if you find one that's within their core, it certainly makes it easier. But also from a resilience standpoint, finding that they're continually looking for new partners that are going to move their clients forward, such as Mansell in this case.
100%. Yeah. And I think that they do an outstanding job of vetting their vendor partners too, because it's not all just like checking boxes and, you know, every fintech that comes to the door doing integrations and stuff. They do an outstanding job of making sure that the integrations continue to happen in a way that doesn't negatively impact the UI UX. You know, it's direct integrations. It looks native. It feels new. It's not iframes and SSOs and new tabs all over the place. So I think that would be the second thing. And the third thing, to your point, is the people. You know, I love the Collab conference because I'm so close with so many people at Alchemy. And that's, again, because that's our team. Like, they might as well just be in a department of NASA Federal Credit Union at that point. And, you know, we had heard feedback all along the way from other FIs that had gone to Alchemy of, you know, they seek to understand at a deeper level, what is your FI trying to do? And you know, you hear that again and again. You hear that in the credit union space, and you're like, yeah, okay.
You got to feel it.
And you do 100%. I mean, we had two sales people on our implementation or our actual vendor search project, Chaz and Mark. I still text both of them, you know? And then that went so well that, you know, we kind of waited for the shoe to drop and we went into implementation. We're just like, oh, okay, the sales guys are done. You signed the paper. And our implementation team was amazing. You know, and so you're like, okay, this is great. You know, the go live's going to go, and then we're going to, you know, I assume we're going to get a sales manager and a rep manager that don't care about us. You know, it's, you know, and it just never happened that way. You know, and everyone on the leadership team is outstanding, and so it's just been such a good relationship from start to now that the people on the Alchemy team were just outstanding.
What's interesting, not one of your top three, but I know it's the number one item for many people in your organization is security and risk. And the reality is, it's like saying, I'm going to the restaurant. I know I'm not going to see rats on the floor. And if I do, the game's over with immediately. And I think that doesn't say it has a lower priority. It's the one that can kick them out of the room immediately with other people in the team. You need to make sure that you have somebody that's going to pass those tests. But it doesn't matter how good they are at 1, 2, and 3. If they don't pass the security thing, it's not going to get there. So, you know, you ran very fast. You had a mission. You were obviously passionate about that, as your team was, as your management was. Probably at sometimes doubting whether or not you're going to actually hit the finish line at the time you're going to. What was one of the challenges or negative surprises you had in the process? You go, geez, I didn't see that coming. I missed it when I wasn't in the same role where I was before.
No, that's a fair question. And when I think about probably gotchas or things like that, are, you know, we had a very clear view of what we wanted to do. Digital banking at NASA had been there for so long that so many business processes have kind of just been assumed at that point. And so when you start to unravel all of that, or you start to go through and say, okay, you have to explain now to a new vendor, how does ACH work? How are what are the expectations of ACH? You know, what it really uncovers is everyone knows how it works from muscle memory.
Yeah.
To explain it is totally different. And so I think with any sort of digital banking conversion, especially if you haven't done one recently, one of the gotchas can be that, the lack of documentation or the lack of I know how my current system works.
Yep.
I don't know what I actually want or need out of a new one. Because you're using the old one as the metric, even if the old one's terrible.
Well, it's like legacy core.
Yeah.
We get stuck with 1 foot in the past, and maybe a toe or a little bit more in the future. I use the ropes course as an analogy that if you don't let go of that first rope to go to grab the second one, you're farther away the next time. So especially when you're doing it at the speed that you did it and the scale you did it, you can't afford to not let go of that rope.
Yeah, and you have to. And then the thing is, you kind of, in certain situations, you kind of have to let go, and what happens, And that's why I think when you do have a go live, you have to focus on, at least with digital banking, to me, you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do every checkbox.
Right.
I kind of always use the analogy that a lot of times a conversion, you're replacing the platform, and that is the change. You don't have to bring extra changes with it, and it's really common that is the speeding train that's hit all the green lights in project land, and then people start throwing stuff in.
Oh yeah.
Because that's been blessed. So you can just go. And so it is really important to be able to keep a focus on what are we trying to do, what can we save for day 1, day 2, day 3. And if you miss something along the way, especially in the speed at which we did it, you adjust, you stay flexible, agile, as they say.
Yeah. So you need to also internally have everybody on the same page from the very beginning. You have to bring the right players in to implement at the speed you're doing, and have them all feel engaged in part of that. How did you do that at NASA?
Yeah, we had a couple different groups that came in different phases. And so again, during the vendor search process, what we had is our kind of stakeholder group. And pretty much every department of the credit union was represented there by some sort of leader, right?
Every area.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Including legal and compliance.
They were there. And so we were able to go through with that vendor search and kind of get everyone's feedback all the time. We did basically a little SWOT analysis for each team. Again, we did 15 demos, between both myself and David, our CIO, and then, the ones that we knew would be potential good fits, we would bubble up to that group. And so by the time we got to the point where we were able to decide from Alchemy, everyone knew why. There were no surprises or anything like that. I definitely think you can't leave it up to committee by any means. There were no votes, right? And so we had kind of a secondary group that was a steering committee, which was, a select amount of the C-level group and myself that really were the ones to distill the feedback and ultimately make the decision. But it was made in line with the feedback we got. So there was no need for some sort of override decision or anything like that. And then once we went live, we basically kept those two groups intact. The stakeholder group shrunk slightly just from an operational standpoint. So, you still have marketing and payments and call center and, compliances in there too, and IT and tech and myself. And so that's the group that meets on a weekly basis that knows everything that's going on with Alchemy, changes that we're making, changes that Alchemy's making.
Because you said it's an evolutionary
process.
It went from revolutionary to evolutionary very quickly. And you can't stop that because, as you said, you didn't check all the boxes right out of the gate.
Correct. Yeah.
You made sure that the platform was there, and then that evolution takes place.
Yep. Yeah. And again, you continue to get the buy-in. You're able to kind of get that cross-functional list of what does everyone want. And so we do that on a weekly basis, and then we also keep that steering committee in place too for kind of larger strategy type decisions, of okay, what are we going to do next year? What's the long-term stuff we want to chase?
So how do you make it the awareness across the organization beyond the leaders? In other words, the teller in branch 3, or the manager in branch 7, or the person that's in charge of credit adjudication on consumer loans that's in the back office. Jim. Well, only because every one of these people feel somewhere in them that they're at risk with digital banking.
100%.
And oh, by the way, you're not doing a rebranding.
No.
You're doing a reconstruction of everything they're used to dealing with.
Oh yeah.
How do you keep that communication alive? And how did you do that within NASA?
Yeah, honestly, that's always going to be a challenge, without a doubt. When you've got digital banking at the core of what you are doing, right? And it's no more or less important than anyone else's role, but everyone else is doing their job,
right?
Day in and day
out.
Not
like we have extra time on our
right,
hands.
Right, exactly. And to your point, digital banking is always changing, always evolving. I mean, every week we have changes that are going live somewhere, whether it's setting changes, Alchemy updates, things like that. And so we have a few levels of communication that we put in place. So right after go live, we've got an internal Office 365 environment.
Yep.
So I have a little SharePoint blog that I run. And so, probably I'm going to say about twice a week, I post updates on what's coming, and that could be, a platform release, a mobile release, screenshots of push provisioning going live and things like that. And I use that as kind of the cliff notes for an employee that's saying like what's going on with digital banking this week. We do that. I take the release notes from Alchemy that Alchemy publishes and put that, like literally copy and paste that for everyone to see if they want to take a look at it. And then we utilize Teams, and so we're able to have channels where, people on our payments team, call center, retail service can report issues. And so like that's kind of a way not only just to open a ticket, but escalate and ask questions, frankly. And, it's not just myself that's in there, it's that same stakeholder group plus more. And so what you actually see is a nice collaborative approach to support, where it's not necessarily me just opening tickets with Alchemy or having an answer for everything. Someone else in call center can be like, hey, I saw that and I fixed it this way.
Yeah.
And so communication's always going to be a challenge for sure. You're going to have people that they didn't read the blog, and I don't blame them. They got other things
all
to
kinds
do.
of things going on.
And so honestly, I'm going to say the final thing is always having an open door policy. I try and make a point to always say anyone at any point in the credit union, if you've got a question as a member using the platform, or if you have a question, reach out to me directly. We can hop on a quick call, we can do a screen share, I can open a ticket, I can escalate with Alchemy, anything. It's kind of getting past a little bit that concept of everyone's busy, so they're scared to talk to you. I can't. It's hard when people say I know you're really busy, but and it's no, this is my job. I'm here for this level of support, and so all of that kind of blends together into this kind of continuous communication that occurs, whether that's on a scheduled basis or one-off.
So I get the feeling that change mentality, continuously evolving, was already in place before you got there.
Yeah,
it didn't sound like you had to all of a sudden take something that was at a standstill.
Yeah,
maybe the digital banking platform was, but there were other things going on in this organization all the time. And so when somebody comes in, change is part of the mentality that took place there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, by the way, we have something coming down the tracks, and it's going to be a completely different day.
Yeah.
They've been hearing that from different areas of the financial institution for quite some time.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest thing, besides getting the platform up?
Yeah.
What's the biggest innovation you've introduced since that platform came up?
Ooh.
There may not be innovation. What's the biggest improvement?
That's a better one. And the reason I say it's hard is because it's night and day. The platform that we were on before was a legacy platform.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked and felt like it was in 2003.
Comfort zone, though.
Yeah, and so one of the very first things, though, that we looked at and I looked at when I joined Asset Credit Union are customer reviews. I remember looking at the App Store, and mobile on iOS and Android, I'm not kidding, we're 1.3 and 1.4 stars. I mean, it was. There's an Alchemy video where I call it a horror show, and it was. It honestly was. Our members were telling us this is not good enough, and so that was a huge part of the Alchemy consideration was that MX, that getting the UI UX experience and something that was cross-platform and felt feature parity across both mobile and desktop, and both of those platforms now 4.8 and 4.9 stars.
Wow.
And to the point where we had our marketing team respond to negative reviews and say, we had reviews that were junk it and start over. And our marketing team is in there guess what, we did. And that member's going back and changing the review to a 5-star review. And that to me was the ultimate.
That's the big.
It was an immediate just jolt. I think to both the credit union, to membership. And we've had people and members that were we finally see that you were paying attention. We see that you're making an investment in this. We can't wait, And so, that was step one. And one of the other things that I love is that, we had members in our reviews saying, oh, I want Zelle. Oh, I want Zelle. And now thanks because we have Alchemy, we can have Zelle. And we're going to have Zelle this year. And, that's just another round of that, hey, we've been listening and now I can respond to you and say, thanks to the platform, we're innovating, and we're catching up and we're doing things and we're both, kind of bringing us into what our members expect and honestly going further at this point. into doing features that I don't think would have been possible without Alchemy's help.
So with that in mind,
Yeah.
looking forward.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go very far because you got all kinds of things on.
Yeah.
And the next year, what is on your to-do list that you're saying? I mean, it's funny because you have such a tight time frame with when you're going to be doing things based on what you already did in such a short time frame. Kind of puts you under a little bit of pressure.
Yep.
But what are you going to be doing the next 6 months, 1 year, whatever else right now?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, one of our biggest focuses is always on the card experience.
Yep.
And so, when we went live with Alchemy, not only did we bring in like card lock and travel notices and all the kind of what are table stakes now.
Yep.
One of the items that we actually helped Alchemy with building was the merchant and transaction level blocks. So you could say like, I want to allow in-store, but not online. I want to allow ATMs, but not adult purchases and stuff, And so we had that. We launched push provisioning with Alchemy in January. And so now we've got the direct wallet integration there with Apple Pay and Google Pay, which is great. And then really what we're pushing for this year is actually the kind of buttoning up the true digital issuance, like real-time activation flow, where now members would be able to activate the card digitally by itself and say, I don't have the physical card yet, but I want to use it with my wallet, and then not activate that physical card. It comes in the mail and now you're fully activated. So really kind of buttoning up that whole flow because we put a lot of time and effort into that card management process. Zelle is a big thing. Zelle is something that I think members have been asking for quite a while. Obviously, Zelle made changes to their retail app. So, we were able to work with Alchemy, prioritize the project, and that should be live by summer, which is huge based on what I'm hearing.
I think it's important for people who may be listening that may have had all these things in place already to understand the process you have here. Because you were in literally the dark ages and didn't have a lot of the things that all your competitors, most of your competitors had.
Yeah.
You're coming out of the dark ages to the light years now. And I think it's because your process is all structured in such a way that change is actually good and it's expected, and you're continually evolving. I think it's kind of fun because you came from an organization that was very mature from the standpoint of building partnerships, doing innovation. You now are saying, I got to get the basics right, and then I can do these other things that are so important in the areas that are moving the fastest, such as payments, which is it's going lightning speed every day, and you never know when you open the paper what's going to come up next.
That's true.
As you mentioned in the pre-discussion around crypto and things like this. And then you have to prioritize it based on what your members want. Because at the end of the day, you could do something that you have a passion for, but you may be the only one and maybe 5 other people that want that, and you got to go, I'm not sure if that's where I want to invest right now.
Right,
How do you get the commitment for the next step that you do, every next step? Do you go to the management team? Is it the same core that was in the process to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes actually through a few different flows. I mean, it's interesting because, you always have some level of, what's our plan, in the next 12 months, 24 months, what have you. We kind of make a point not to project too far out because you can't. I mean, there's just too much going on. And so we really focus on like, what do we want to do probably over the next 4 quarters? Right. And so like that keeps it nice and tight. That keeps it close. That keeps it real. And so you can say things like, we want a P2P solution. We want to improve cards. Maybe we want to do youth banking or things like that. And those tangible partners exist in the market space today. The other level of things that's been nice too. So, Alchemy has continued to put effort in the SDK and API side of things. And so we do have an internal development team that used to be responsible for keeping features live on our old platform. And so it was actually nice to move to a platform that had it out of the box so that we could actually focus on building things we wanted to build, not keeping something alive. And so we actually have a lot of projects. We want to do custom development this year. We're very collaborative in the Alchemy space. We help run multiple of their user groups. And so what I'm trying to actually...
This is kind of crazy when I'm thinking, putting this in context that you're a relatively new partner. But one that has known what's available in the past. You're pushing your providers on things that they may not be ready to be pushed on. But it's not because you want to let things go, but you're going, you know what? I'm here now. I'm able to entertain these elements. And we've seen this more and more that it used to be that the providers would basically be the ones saying, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And now a lot of financial institutions are pushing the providers to move that thing forward. I mean, you saw the product people on the stage today and what they're doing. And there's things in your mind that I'm sure you're going, I got to find a way to do this
Yeah.
maybe even beyond where they're thinking. But finding the right provider that has an open mind to say, we'd like to work
Right.
with you on that is a big deal.
Well, and I think I kind of have the opinion that the credit union space is very fintech obsessed.
Yes, yeah.
And, and there's a lot of good providers out there for sure, without a
Yep.
doubt. But you can get stuck window shopping for a long time, and
yeah.
so I think a lot of it is the other thing that we kind of actually leave open is like what organically happens. What random fintech do you meet at a conference that suddenly is like, yeah, that's actually a good fit. And we weren't looking for you, you know?
Right.
And we've had that this year. We've had situations where we had introductions with fintechs that were in our long-term 3 to 5 year map that were like, no, now's the right time.
Because it enables other things.
It does. It enables other things, or it's, it's the perfect time at the right place, and all of that makes sense. The other thing that I think is really good, especially with larger platforms like Alchemy or Q2 and things like that, they have a very robust client base. And so I think financial institutions that are clients also need to be proactive when they hit a wall somewhere.
Yep.
Because you're going to hit a wall somewhere like if the roadmap's full, or we can't do that right now. You have a network that you can actually utilize quite a bit to get what you need to do. Like if you say something, like I'll just use an example, right? Like if I say I want beneficiaries in digital banking, and maybe Alchemy doesn't have it.
Yep.
I can guarantee there's probably 5, 6, 7 other credit unions that want beneficiaries that'll have the SDK and devs that happily build that together.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it's, you have to take a very collaborative approach, work with your vendors, work with the features and integrations that they have, but that whole other network of other credit unions that, are also trying to solve the same things. Like there's a really good kind of open source movement there that I think honestly could be taken advantage of even more to solve more problems.
And to build that kind of, you can do it at an event like this.
Yeah,
But to be able to build it in such a way you find a neighborhood, that says we're all kind of in the same space and what we want to do next.
Yep.
Let's figure out a way around this.
Yeah, exactly.
So banking space is changing every day.
Yep.
You're doing a lot at NASA and what you're doing. What excites you about the future of banking right now?
Ooh. I think what excites me the most, especially about digital banking, is that kind of same move the needle process that we have an attitude at NASA in terms of like always pushing forward. That whole market is being pushed forward.
Yeah.
Every digital banking provider is having to move or change.
Yep.
And, you see, platforms like Alchemy, Q2, Lumen, kind of market leaders growing and having to evolve. But there's so many other new platforms too that I think are really good up and comers to watch, and you have this whole other
even
kind
if they're specialists.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And you made a really good point earlier that it isn't always the market leaders that's the best bet.
Right.
There's a lot of benefit to being smaller, and you actually probably have more choice at that point. And so I think
and less layers when you're trying to implement something.
Exactly.
You could not get that speed.
No.
Any organization that's between number 100 and 1,000 as far as size.
Yeah.
You just can't.
No, and I think the entire digital banking market has gotten so competitive now that it's pushing everyone forward.
Yep.
So you've got the established players, you've got the no-code players, you've got, some folks that are still doing it in-house, you've got, Backbases of the world that kind of are a platform, play and things like that. And it's just exciting to see what people are doing, and letting kind of some of the techie stuff be left to fintechs, and then you end up in situations where digital banking is an enablement layer. Transfers are transfers, balances are balances. Like they're going to look different, but they're probably going to start looking the same.
Yeah.
And so it's how do you differentiate, and
that's going to be a key.
It's how do you deliver quickly.
I mentioned a couple of the other products that we've done here is that, Accenture came out with something that said, your mobile banking app gets high grades across the board at 99% of the organizations.
Yeah. Yep.
How do you make them look different?
Yeah.
How do you make the functionality look different? I looked at Chime I guess it was last week now. They had introduced a $500 line of credit. They're going to put it on the app and make it, they're not even going to use credit bureaus. They build enough logic to say, here's that's the future.
Yeah, like
the
little micro loans.
To break out risk and make it so you don't get hogtied by our risk profile has to be this, or maybe we can go lower than $1,000 line of credit in a banking world, which, that's like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do there? You can go down to $100 and make it so everybody has that stopgap insurance policy that says if something goes wrong, I can cover it.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and honestly, another good point too. You mentioned security earlier. I mean, honestly, like I think from my perspective, the reason it wasn't one of the top three is because that's an expectation.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like I mean, if you have to say security is a priority and like call that out,
Yeah.
like that would scare me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know,
And the reality is, you have other people in your organization that is their everyday, every
oh,
second
without a doubt.
mission. And if they're doing their job correctly and have the right partners and the right evaluation of what's
Yep.
going on, they're going to save you.
Yeah, and honestly, again, the call out Alchemy specifically, and there's other players in this space too. You know, making it go beyond just MFA or you know IP monitoring and things like that, and actually being able to make real time decisions where it's not reactive anymore. You know, it's not batch where you're trying to be like, oh, a wire went out yesterday.
Beauty of digital. Yep.
Yeah, like being able to stop it in the moment without impacting the member experience.
Yeah.
Like I mean that is like chef's kiss. if you can get there.
Yeah. Liam, wow, time goes fast when you're talking. You have an excited attitude.
Thank you.
But I think it's because you see what's possible.
Yeah.
You brought a big team along with you.
Yep.
You had a big foundation that you said, I know what can happen.
Yeah.
And you kind of when you got that opportunity to try something in another organization, kind of like a plaything. It was kind of like,
oh, it's fun.
It was
man.
big old sandbox. You're going, man, I can be a big fish in a nice sized pond and do a lot immediately.
Well, yeah.
And it's not just you.
Yeah.
It takes all the team. It takes all the communication processes. But I think what's important here is that no matter where you are in the digital transformation process, stop making excuses about how long it's going to take.
Yeah, 100%.
Stop making excuses about compliance, regulation. We can't do this right now for this or that.
Yep.
The reality is you can.
Yeah.
You just have to have that attitude and have an organization around you that really supports that level of transformation.
Yeah, you 100% said it perfectly, without a doubt. I mean, I agree 100%. Like, the change can happen.
Yeah.
The organization just needs to believe in it, which, I mean, mine did. And it had a ton of trust in me and still does, you know, and you see the impact of it. You see how well it can go when everyone is on the same page, working towards the same goals. And that, again, the go live isn't the finish line.
Yeah.
You know, if anything, that's when the excitement begins because
opportunities wide open. Now.
Expectations are now met. We're good to where we need to be. Now we've level set. Now where do we go? And that's the fun stuff. So
great having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
It's a blast. Thank you.
I
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. A special thank you to my team from Evergreen who's here making this live event happen. A special thank you to Leah Hassage, my senior producer, and my audio engineer and video producer, Chris Fafalius and Will Pritz. Again, thank you so much for listening to FIsionaries podcast. Hope you can join us again.